Now, one difficulty for politicians is the searing conflict between what the public say and what they expect. We say we like authenticity, people who say what they think. We don't like professional spin. But when a politician behaves in an authentic, idiosyncratic way, we often then expect them to conform to some media-managed norm. Now, the conflict for Jeremy Corbyn between being himself or fitting in will be particularly acute, as he is quite an idiosyncratic guy. And as early as tonight, a small example of that emerged. It came up at the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting. He was asked if he would be wearing a white poppy for peace come Remembrance Day in November. And he wasn't able to answer clearly. Now, that could create a bad headline or two, and it was not long before a clarification emerged. He will be wearing a red poppy. It's this kind of diversionary fuss that makes some cross with the media. And if one thing's emerged clearly since Jeremy Corbyn's win on Saturday, is that the days are gone where a Labour leader sucks up to newspaper proprietors or tries to satisfy them with pleasing announcements. On the contrary, the Corbyn team have been critical of the media and have played quite hard to get pulling out of some important interviews to annoy people. Now, can it end well? Here's David Grossman.
And I'm therefore delighted to declare Jeremy Corbyn elected as leader of the Labour Party.
A politician complaining about the media, so goes the old quote, is rather like a ship's captain complaining about the sea. Nevertheless, in his victory speech, Labour's new skipper wasted no time in doing just that.
I say to journalists, attack public political figures, make criticism of them. That's okay. That is what politics is about. But please don't attack people who didn't ask to be put in the limelight, merely want to get on with their lives. Leave them alone. Leave them alone in all circumstances.
What his supporters would call smear and misrepresentation, the journalists concerned would probably defend as scrutiny of his record.
The backbenchers in your own party are asking for a rethink already. They're asking for a rethink, saying top 4 jobs all going to men. They're not happy with that.
The new Labour leader is pretty uncompromising in his dealings with the press. Last night, after announcing most of his new shadow cabinet, he wouldn't say a word to hacks, which is of course his right, but is, shall we say, unconventional.
I can't understand why you want to talk to the media.
Anything at all to say, Mr. Corbyn?
If you would simply answer the question, we'd stop.
Why is people bothering me?
These people are bothering me, his only utterance.
He clearly is completely uncomfortable in this job. He's not suited for it. He doesn't like the idea of a chauffeur-driven car. He doesn't like the idea of a police escort. And he got well and truly nailed by Sky with this rather strange shouting down the street thing. That's a two-edged sword. Some people don't like the look of that. Other people do. Some people think he should have answered something he shouldn't have answered. But the one thing he shouldn't do, of course, is be rude and ill-mannered. Because the good thing about it is they're going around saying he's a very nice, kind, gentle man. Well, it's not very well-mannered to dump Andrew Marr at the last minute, so he's going to need some media management.
But could hostility to the media be an effective strategy in itself? Look no further, perhaps, than the Scottish referendum yes campaign of a year ago.
What Corbyn's support has in common with the pro-independence campaign in Scotland is basically anti-Westminster, anti-establishment, anti-politics. And that is where the great similarity lies. And once you cast the media as part of the old, corrupt, dishonest politics, it becomes part of that broader attempt to depict yourself as the insurgent, the anti-establishment figure, and the media, the reporters of news, as part of the old, failed establishment.
So it could work?
Absolutely. I think it could be a very effective strategy.
In the past, Labour's had a troubled relationship with the press. Tony Blair, though, went on a charm offensive. Got too close, say his critics, particularly to Rupert Murdoch's titles. Given that Mr Corbyn's deputy is now Tom Watson, who led a one-man campaign on phone hacking, the new Labour leadership is unlikely to repeat the Blair rapprochement. A new dimension now, though, of course, is social media. Could that allow Labour to bypass the traditional media?
Most of the social media campaigns in the last few elections that I've seen have been completely ineffectual and mainly aimed at young people, and young people are not very well known for voting.
Tonight, around 1,000 Corbyn supporters were meeting for a victory event.
This event in North London is packed to capacity, but we, as the media, aren't allowed in, which is fine except even some people in Jeremy Corbyn's intimate team believe that if he's going to cut through to the wider electorate and move beyond these die-hard fans, he's going to have to start dealing with the mainstream media more effectively.
David Grossman, well, joining me to discuss all that is Guardian columnist Ellie Mae O'Hagan and Conservative peer and associate editor of The Times, Lord Finkelstein, Danny Finkelstein. Evening to you both. Danny, does it matter that he missed the Andrew Marr show?
Well, both not in the slightest and quite a lot. Not in the slightest in the sense that it's a process story and people won't experience it because he was not on. So therefore they didn't know that he was not on unless they're watching some very arcane programmes. So they don't know that and it doesn't make that much difference. On the other hand, it's not a sort of great new radical gesture to park your car too far away so you have to be pursued by the media when you don't want to talk to them. And in the end it can look a bit incompetent. So it's both things. I think media has got to be very careful. If Jeremy Corbyn wants a new style, he doesn't want to be too personal. He wants to do things in a more informal way. He wants a more authentic style. We're supposed to be covering him, not the other way round. So it's very important that he's allowed to do that and people aren't too stick in the mud about PMQs and whatever else he wants to do. At the same time, just because he wants to take a different stance in politics doesn't give him a licence to be sort of incompetent in the way he handles the media. I think there was a little bit of that, but maybe it's inexperience. And certainly when I worked for William Hague at first, everything was all at sea until you get the first few weeks behind you and then you've got the staff. So I think one shouldn't jump to conclusions that it'll go on like this.
Ellie, you're much more of a Corbyn supporter. What do you think of his approach to the media, the kind of aloofness from it?
Well, I mean, looking at the sort of hysterical headlines that have filled the papers since it looked like Corbyn was going to become Labour leader, I completely understand his reticence, and I'm not sure, perhaps there's an argument that there's not much to be gained from engaging with a media that seems determined to sort of bring him down. On the other hand, I do worry that if he doesn't engage with the media, that it might create a vacuum that will then be filled by his opponents. So I suppose I would like to see Jeremy talking more in the mainstream media about what he believes.
Well, let's drill into that a bit. I mean, take the Mail and the Sun. I mean, obviously, his words, I think a lot of them aimed at the Mail in particular. He won't even talk to the Sun.
Yes.
Is it contemptuous of their readers if he won't kind of address them? He's trying to reach out to a bigger population than his supporters, isn't he? And is it contemptuous of the readers if you don't kind of address the newspapers that they read?
Well, I would say I'm a little biased when it comes to the Sun because I did live in Liverpool for 7 years, Justice for the 96, etc. So I probably won't give the Sun a fair hearing. I mean, Jeremy, you know, he's entitled not to talk to these papers. I don't think that they'll give him a fair shot, you know, if he does talk to them. On the other hand, I do think that a paper is just a conduit to speak to the public. And you know, I personally believe that people on the left should take whatever platform that they can. But obviously, having said that, there are other platforms available to Jeremy. I'd be very cross with him if the Mail was the only way of speaking to the media in the country. But it isn't. And I think it's completely understandable that he wants to, you know, take platforms that might be a little bit more, not in favour, but fair to him.
Right.
I mean, I just reject the idea that what the questions that were asked him during the leadership campaign were hysterical. And I realise they seem like that partly because I think the answers were quite unconvincing. And I think the reason why the newspapers put them to him is, you know, the Sun thinks its readers might want to know what his view was about why he thought Hezbollah were friends. And if the answer is only it was a smear, that's not a good enough answer. So I think these papers are, you know, my own paper, for example, The Times, we can't tell our readers what to think, but we have developed an instinct for the questions they'd like asked, and we try to ask them. And we would reasonably expect the leader of the Labour Party to answer those questions. And he may decide we're not worthy of an answer, and then we'll draw our own conclusions from that.
Let's just follow this point you were making, though, about social media, because John McDonnell said today that we're creating a new media. I think he was implying we've got our own media. Social media is just not going to cut it. I mean, you heard Lord Bell say, you know, that's talking to young people. You've got to talk to more than young people, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, can I just congratulate Newsnight on its choice of the sort of respectable old man to sort of talk about what the young people are doing in social media. I did enjoy that. I mean, I do agree that, you know, the mainstream media is still hugely important in creating debate.
Everything I get thrown to on Facebook is a link to some article in your newspaper or in his newspaper.
Well, I mean, Yes, I mean, you know, like mainstream media is really important. I'm not going to deny that, and I hope that Corbyn will engage with it, and I'm here engaging with it now. But what I would say is that social media is, you know, a tool that Corbyn can use to bypass mainstream media and also to galvanise the thousands of people up and down the country who've given up their precious free time to come and watch him speak. And that's a really important thing. And he can use social media to get those people to become more active in his campaign. And really, unfortunately, I do think that it's necessary for him to do that. It's not an option that he has, because I disagree with Danny that the press have been fair to him. You know, you talk about the Hamas allegations. Well, actually, Corbyn did give an answer to that, and I've seen, you know, the Sun saying, "Well, Jez is buds with Hamas." Even after that, I don't think it's the case.
But is he only keen on talking to friendly newspapers? Because you wouldn't agree with a politician who said, "I'm only going to give answers to friendly newspapers." That's not going to work, is it?
I don't think it's a case of friendly and unfriendly. I think it's a case of fairness, and I think that I think it's true to say there are newspapers that want to be deliberately misrepresentative of Jeremy.
Danny, social media.
Yes.
Is it different in the era of social media?
Absolutely. Look, I think there's definitely been a challenge to the unquestioned power of newspapers to make opinion, and the social media is important, and it does challenge that, and it means that we have an even greater duty to make sure the things that we run are robust, because people can question them more easily. But that doesn't mean we don't deserve an answer, and it also doesn't mean that you can be unprofessional about television. If you are going to make a very radical pitch to the country, something that does change politics and widens the debate hugely in maybe a welcome or an unwelcome way, if you're going to do that, it's particularly important to look professional, because otherwise you begin to look eccentric, and you don't want your politics, which may be radical and interesting and important, also to look unconventional and eccentric merely because you can't do a television Photoshop.
Danny, Ellie, thanks both very much.